Now, recently I've talked a lot about the Winnipeg Jets and how they could potentially upgrade their defensive core moving forward this season, potentially at the trade deadline, and looking at type of trade partners within the Nashville Predators, the Columbus Blue Jackets, even the St. Louis Blues and the Arizona Coyotes, and trying to find a way to move for any one of those potential defensemen available, like Matthias Ekholm, Vince Dunn, David Savard, and whatnot, that have potentially been rumored to be available going into this deadline. But I think there's another side to this coin in upgrading and fixing the Jets' defensive problems that might actually make a lot more sense than making a risky trade and bringing in a guy who has to potentially wait 3 weeks to be able to actually join the club and play meaningful minutes due to the NHL and the Canadian government's quarantine imposed on travelers coming over from the United States or anywhere in that matter in the world to Canada. You have to go in through a 2-week quarantine, and because of that, I think there's an option that has recently become more of a possibility. It's looking like coming in from the fact that the Carolina Hurricanes are actually having completely stalled conversations with defenseman Dougie Hamilton in talking about getting a contract extension done. Now, I've seen a lot of people ask me in the comment section recently of that video, which I will link in the description, of me talking about what type of defenseman the Jets could trade for. I'll link that down in the description if you haven't watched it already. But people asked me in that video in the comment section, Jake, do you think that the Jets could go out and get Dougie Hamilton? And honestly, even because of this situation, at first I was like, yeah, totally, this could be a possibility. But the more I read into it, the more I really just realized that it doesn't make any sense if you're Carolina to trade Dougie Hamilton. Even if you know you're not going to be able to sign Dougie Hamilton going into this year's free agency, it makes absolutely no sense to trade a top defenseman unless you're getting a completely amazing king's ransom when you're a cup contending team like the Hurricanes are. I just don't think it makes much sense if you're them. You want to take in the best roster available. It's like the stupid rumors that have recently come up about the Jets selling high on Paul Stastny. Why would you want to do that when the guy's playing good hockey for you? You ride that out. Take the risk of him expiring and not getting anything back in the reward, because think about it, you paid almost nothing for Paul Stastny anyway. It doesn't make sense, right? You want to have a good, complete roster moving forward. You don't want to think about assets. That's not what any GM's doing in this type of situation, especially if you have a player like Dougie Hamilton on your team who is coming up as an unrestricted free agent, who is a guy you just don't want to, you don't want him to walk away for nothing, but at the same time, you don't want to, hurt your team and handicap your team at the end of the season, near the end of the season, an already shortened season, and trade one of your top 4 guys, one of your top pairing guys. It just doesn't make much sense. So I don't see Dougie Hamilton being moved at all. I don't think that happens. Where I do see it becoming more of a realistic situation for a team to go out and get Dougie Hamilton is this coming up free agency. And I do think that it is very possible. I've run the math, I've done it, and I'm going to explain why. I think the Winnipeg Jets have a legit chance at signing Dougie Hamilton. Whether, obviously, if he wants to come here, but I think that the cap and everything will work out, and I think it would make a lot of sense for this club moving forward. This is coming from Pierre LeBrun earlier this week talking about why Dougie Hamilton and the Carolina Hurricanes contract negotiations have stopped. Basically, to sum it up for you guys, Dougie Hamilton's agent and camp, they want to be around Alex Pietrangelo's new deal that he just signed with the Vegas Golden Knights. They want to be around that $8.8 million average, while in comparison to what the Carolina Hurricanes are asking and providing Dougie Hamilton with for the contract is more closer to around what Torey Krug just signed for, about that 6.5 average, and that's kind of just where it is right now. Alex Pietrangelo, Hamilton wants Pietrangelo money, while teams like Carolina, obviously as it stands right now, want to give that more team-friendly contract for a good two-way defender. And when you look over at Dougie Hamilton's stats for the last couple of years, even in the seasons, it makes sense why he would want that type of money, but obviously this year there has been some concerns about his offensive production. If you go and look over with his last season with the Calgary Flames, in 82 games played, he had 17 goals, 27 assists for 44 points as a defenseman. Now that's really, really good, and let me stress that Dougie Hamilton's game may be heavily offensive based. He does play a lot and he does pinch a lot, but I would still categorize him as a very, very solid contributing two-way defender, and I think that that's why the Jets really should go out and get a guy like this, because Hamilton's big, he has that offensive upside, and it's kind of like that sense of what Buffalo brought, obviously not maybe that physical side, but you get that defender who can jump in on the rush with a good shot, who can score goals and be offensive and contribute on the power play, and you get a good two-way defender that can play good and meaningful defensive minutes for you in the back end of the ice, and that's very important at the NHL level, especially if you're a top pairing defenseman. That's the definition, in my opinion, of what a top pairing defenseman should be in the league. A guy that can play really good offensive hockey, but at the same time has a really good two-way game and can come back and play really meaningful defense. And that's really all that it comes down to. And I believe that Dougie Hamilton is the type of guy that the Jets need desperately for their defensive core. When you go and look at the last 3 seasons he's spent with the Carolina Hurricanes, he's had very good seasons. Obviously not close to what he had with Calgary, obviously respectively putting up 44 points in his last season, 50 points in the season before that, 43 points in his first season with Calgary. It's actually ironic. When you look at the last current amount of time he's spent in the NHL, he's actually spent 3 years with each and every single one of his clubs potentially. Boston 3 years, Calgary 3 years, and the Carolina Hurricanes for 3 years. I just noticed that. That's kind of funny. But nonetheless, talking more about his stats recently with Carolina, in his first year with Carolina in 82 games back in 2018-19, putting up 18 goals, 21 assists for 39 points. A little bit of a step back in point production, but still nonetheless a very productive year for a defenseman. Getting into the 2019-20 campaign, in 47 games played, he put up 14 goals, 26 assists for 40 points, and that's in 47 games. So that's a very, very good production for a defenseman. Not just shy of a point per game, almost just really close to it. So pretty good stats there for a guy in 47 games, and his offense just looking very good. And when you get into this year, in the first 24 games played of Dougie Hamilton so far, he's only been able to score 1 goal, which is very, very shocking if you're a fan of Dougie Hamilton and you've watched him for a while. His lowest career goals so far in his career came as a rookie, and that was still 5 goals as a rookie with the Boston Bruins back in 2012-2013. So to have him only get 1 goal and 16 assists for 17 points, although getting a lot of assists and still being productive offensively, you do want to see him get more goals because that's a very, very big part of his game. And now that I've kind of talked enough about this history lesson about why I think Dougie Hamilton would be the perfect fit for the Jets, let's talk about actually how the Jets can manage to sign him in this coming up offseason. Now, the expiring players that the Winnipeg Jets have, this is all expiring players, UFA and RFA combined. This is the list. It's a pretty big list. Paul Stastny, Matthew Peruse, Adam Lowry, Andrew Kopp, Nate Thompson, Trevor Lewis, Derek Forbert, Tucker Pullman, Lauren Brossoit, and Neil Pionk. And all of those players combined, that's his total of $23,596,000 in cap coming up this year. That is a lot of money to go around. And the main important thing to take away from that is that a lot of the money, for example, in Matthew Perreault, Paul Stastny, potentially aren't guys who are going to be coming back, and if they do come back, are going to be on very reduced contracts compared to what they're currently on. So if you just take into consideration the fact that Matthew Perreault, Thompson, Lewis, Forbert, Pullman, Brossoit most likely could potentially walk this coming up free agency, that leaves you with potentially signing Stastny, Lowry, Andrew Kopp, and Neil Pionk. Now, roughly, I've talked about what these guys could be getting in the past, and honestly, if you're asking me, I think bringing back Paul Stastny on a reduced one-year deal around $4 million could be beneficial for that top 6. Just a one-year deal, nothing long-term, don't commit, just give him a little bit of money, see if he plays well. Worst-case scenario, you deal him at the deadline, right? Nothing problem there. Now, getting into Adam Lowry, that's a little bit more of an interesting situation. I think Adam Lowry, although making just shy of $3 million, I feel like he is going to get a bit of a raise, but not too much of a raise. I see Adam Lowry signing a contract with the Jets coming up this year at around $3.75 million to $4 million maximum. I don't see him being much more than that, considering he's only about a third to fourth line center who's really good at that role, but yet again, look at the way the guys are paid that play that role. I don't think he's going to be a big money. Now, another interesting aspect is Andrew Kopp. I really have no idea what Andrew Kopp is going to sign for. I feel like Andrew Kopp's camp is going to push for a big contract as they see him potentially being a good contributing top 6 member, but I just don't see that in his future with the Jets. I just don't think with the prospects that we have and the type of player potential that it makes a lot of sense to commit a lot of money to Andrew Kopp. So at the time being right now, I'm just going to say that Andrew Kopp's roughly going to sign for around $4.2 million, or even around there, nothing. I really don't even know what to say. So I'm going to leave Kopp out of this for now because I also think there's potentially a move that involves expansion with Seattle coming up. So there's a lot to talk about there, but I'm going to leave Andrew Kopp out of this. And then getting over to Neil Pionk, I've talked about this a lot already. I see him respectively signing a contract for about a big little bit of a pay increase, going up from that $3 million contract to about $5.5 million. I feel like that's very fair for what Neil Pionk brings, especially as an offensive specialist on the defensive end. So definitely a good contract there. Now, all of that put together, and all those guys being signed minus Andrew Kopp, because I really don't know what to price him at, and even if the Jets keep him, that leaves about $10 million, $346,000. So $33,446, That's a lot of cap still to sign a guy, especially if you can get in between 6.5 and 8.8 is what they think the respective price is going to be. So if you go out and get a guy like that, and you have, say, about $3 million left, and you sign Dougie Hamilton, you might be thinking, what does that mean for the future? How are we going to have enough money? Pierre-Luc Dubois is the only other member of the club moving forward that will need to be signed to a contract out of the main core of players after this coming up season, who will be a free agent after next year. he is currently making, like I said, making $5 million. Even if Pierre-Luc Dubois has a fantastic season, he's only going to go up about a couple $1,000,000. I don't see him making more than about $8 million max, maybe nine maximum, and that's if he's a fantastic year. And worst case scenario, he doesn't play the best he does, he gets another bridge deal with a little bit more of a pay increase. All that being said, with the way the current cap is, Brian Little most likely retiring soon and becoming on the LTIR permanently, not affecting the cap anymore, I really do think it is a really high chance, a possibility that somehow, some way, Cheveldayoff finds a way to make an offer and make it work with Dougie Hamilton. I think that Dougie Hamilton is like the missing piece of our defensive core, and if you add Dougie Hamilton, just imagine how good we become with the prospects we have. You add Dougie Hamilton, you have Josh Morrissey already, you sign Neil Pionk, you bring him back, you've got Ville Heinola coming up who will play next season, you've got Declan Chisholm on the Moose who is potentially growing his game more and just becoming more of an offensive defenseman. You've got Dylan Sandberg, again, who's just growing into that role more of being a consistent top 4 two-way defender with a lot of offensive upside who plays a really good defensive game. You already have Sami Niku. If you keep Tucker Pullman on a really cheap contract, that's not bad. Same with Derek Forbert. There's tons of options with the way the defense would look, and the top 4 would be so good if you signed a guy like Dougie Hamilton. He would really complete this team, in my opinion. It's a very big long shot that this happens because you obviously know as much as I do that the Winnipeg is a city in Manitoba isn't a hotbed for NHL free agents. But if Cheveldayoff really wants to push this team over the edge and make them the best version of the Jets that they could be, it is very possible and it is within reason to think that he would make an offer because of how the cap lines up and the type of money and how he plays in the game. I just think it makes a lot of sense, and I think if Cheveldayoff was smart, he would put all of his assets into pursuing Dougie Hamilton in the coming up free agency. Let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below, as always, guys. Let me know your thoughts on Dougie Hamilton, and let me know your thoughts about this video. If you guys think it's possible to see a type of contract being signed with him, if you think he would ever come to Winnipeg, let me know all your thoughts down in the comment section below. If you're a fan of hockey, regardless of the team you root for, definitely consider dropping a subscription. It really does help the channel out as we're trying to push towards that 700 subscribers. So thank you guys so much for tuning into this video, checking it out, and dropping a like and whatnot. Follow me on Twitter if you haven't already, link in the description. Peace, love, and positivity. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I will see you guys in the next video. Go Jets, go.